Testing one, testing one. Test, test, test. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test. Testing 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Testing 1. Test, test, test. Hearing it here. Testing 1. Hearing here. Yeah, that would help. Testing 1. Testing 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test. Test.
I just can't get away from you guys. I don't need any. I don't need the internet.
Who's also a Yale, and Patricia's around here somewhere.
Yeah, she's got a lot.
Go up to the.
She's got a lot to do. Yeah, they didn't. They really should have just put a couple of stairs here.
I didn't think about that.
I almost did ahead of her.
That is
So I was there and I was talking to someone and I was.
see you. Oh my goodness.
I was just, I was talking this way.
Or you don't have a little.
Yeah, exactly. Internet.
I haven't been here since it went over.
Oh, you haven't? Yeah.
I graduated undergraduate here.
What year are you?
72.
89. Just had my 25th.
We had last year, I played football here, we had a 40th reunion of a championship team.
Wow. Yeah, it was really cool seeing all those Hall of Famers come out for so 72. So that was really around that time. It was just after Calvin Hill and those guys. Brian Dowling, those were all them. Yeah. Wow, that was a great time to play football here. They were world class back then.
Yeah. Good guys. This is great. I'm really proud of this. This is really cool.
Yeah, this is very nice. This is a nice room. It's getting a workout this week. We got a lot of, doing a lot of things in it.
So we got you to put a suit on, I saw.
I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy. Do I introduce you when I'm done? Or I go to Patricia. So Patricia's the master of ceremonies.
Patricia's going to basically going to do the introductions. Like she's going to take a seat, and then I'm going to sort of run this like a.
Okay, great. So Patricia will go. I see. She will introduce me, and I come back, and then I hand it back to Patricia. Got it. Okay.
Roz?
Five. She added panelists. I have 5 panelists. So what I have to ask you to do is to hover here until you're on and then walk
Right,
out.
I'll stay right over here.
Okay.
This way.
Does that work for you?
That's perfect. Thank
I
you.
won't need one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's going to be a little bit different.
Okay.
I'm
Jack
doing all
wanted
the
you.
bios?
Jack wanted you to do the bios. He didn't tell you.
Okay,
yet.
okay, so,
So-
am I introducing Andrew?
Yes.
I'm introducing everyone.
It's your program.
Okay.
You want to do it? You can.
No, I can do it.
But
I
yeah, I
can do
think you ought to introduce Andrew.
it. Well, maybe you should introduce Andrew.
If you want me to, I'll introduce Andrew.
Okay.
Okay. We'll get it done. Okay. Wow.
Check, check. Are we on? Good afternoon, everyone. If you could take your seats, we're about to begin the agenda for the evening. Thank you. Once again, my name is Patricia Melton. You all have heard that many times tonight. I am so glad to see all of you here. We're going to have a wonderful evening. This is a fantastic facility. It's a great way for us to bring some of our activities to a close. So we're just going to dive right in. So we're going to have a town hall meeting. We are being live streamed, which is wonderful for us and for you. We have a big agenda. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Roz Wiggins, who is the author of the case study. She's a project editor here at the Yale School of Management. And another little tidbit of information is Roz and I are classmates. We were both here at Yale as undergrads, so it's really a pleasure to work with her here. Before returning to Yale, Roz was an adjunct professor at the University of Connecticut Law School, has served in-house counsel for both Equifax and Pitney Bowes. In addition to graduating from Stanford School of Law, she's also completed an MFA in professional and creative writing. She hopes to write a book, and she will write a book. So without further ado, our author, Roz Wiggins.
Well, I echo Patricia's welcome. It's very good to have PromiseNet here at Yale School of Management, and we are excited to be able to use our case study method to help you all think through some interesting thoughts. I want to introduce to you next Andrew Metrick, who joined the Yale School of Management in 2008. Andrew is the Deputy Dean as well as the Michael H. Jordan Professor of Finance and Management and Director of the Yale Program on Financial Stability, which is a program he founded in 2013 to help financial regulators around the world study the global financial crises. Prior to coming to Yale, Andrew served at Wharton School of Business as well at Harvard and he has received numerous awards for his excellent teaching. He also served during 2009 and 2010 on President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors. And his academic focus is on the improving of our understanding and management of economic risk. Andrew, thank you.
Welcome to the Yale School of Management. We are delighted to be part of PromiseNet 2014. At Yale has been very, very closely involved with New Haven Promise since its founding. And I personally have become involved because I thought it was a really interesting program, and I sent an email to the director, Patricia Melton, and said, boy, it would really be fun to study this program. So we met for coffee, and then 5 minutes later, I had given her our building. So she's a very strong ambassador and leader for the program who convinced us within moments to give her our building. So this is now the New Haven Promise Building of Management. And the partnership that we have with New Haven Promise, I think, is wonderful. Many of our students, this is a school for MBA students primarily, and many of our students serve as mentors in the Promise program here in New Haven. And we hope to continue that partnership and expand that partnership in future years. I will eventually get some data from Patricia to do a study, just holding out on that. But we will do that, and I think really most importantly for tonight is that we have a case study method here that it's a little different than that you see at other places. It's a lot more of a live case study, and it's wonderful to have so many experts in the room about PromiseNet to be able to discuss it. And the author of the case study is Roz Wiggins. She talked about how I am a founder of the Yale program on financial stability, where Roz last year wrote hundreds of pages of cases for us. That's her day job when she's not writing PromiseNet cases. And so you'll get to see what it is we do and the types of materials that we bring out, nice melding of our interests and our partnership with New Haven Promise. So we're delighted to have PromiseNet here, and I look forward to an interesting discussion. Thank you.
I can't say how fortunate we are to have Yale SOM as a partner. It's going to be a long, deep partnership, so thank you, Andrew, for your generosity and the school in general. So what I would like to do now is introduce, you've already seen our illustrious mayor at a number of different events, and I think she's having a pretty good time. Are you having a good time, Mayor? She's having a great time. And so she's going to say a few words of welcome once again. Our partnership with Yale is really exemplary, and she's going to just say a couple of words specifically about our partner here at Yale.
Thank you very much, Pat, and good evening, everyone. And please know that it has been a pleasure to have you in New Haven this week. And I hope that you're enjoying your visit and that you're learning a great deal while you're here. It seems fitting for Yale University and its School of Management to be hosting this event. Yale has been a generous benefactor of New Haven's promise, and Yale continues to embody the promise that is built into each and every new generation. Yale is Connecticut's first institution of higher learning, dating to 1701, and as such ranks as our nation's third oldest college. To put in another way, Yale predates the United States of America by 75 years and has been promoting academic excellence all that time. Yale's relocation to New Haven in 1718 was the start of a productive relationship between the city and the university that will soon be 300 years in the making. So I just want to commend them for the work that they have done around education in our town as well as economic development. But they are not the only partner, and I hope that you have met the head of our community foundation, the Foundation of Greater New Haven, Will Ginsburg, who is a partner. Will you stand up? And has invested as well. And of course, our superintendent of schools who really, in the nation, I think is a leader for school change. Garth Harries, will you please stand up? I am so proud of all of our partners and proud of this Promise program. As mayor, I am intent on revitalizing New Haven's public school system with our superintendent, and we heard earlier today how important partnerships are in that regard, so that the students in this city, with its rich history of academic excellence, will have every opportunity to succeed in their post-secondary education. To be sure, New Haven Promise is a part of that initiative, and we are all delighted that you are here and a part of PromiseNet 2014. Have a great time. I hope you love New Haven. Come back soon.
Okay, I'm going to introduce our panelists. To our left here is Sylvia Thompson. You've seen her throughout the conference. Sylvia Thompson is the director of the El Dorado Promise in Southern Arkansas, and has seen not just a shift in the attitude of students in her city as a result of the promise, she has seen a shift in the attitude of not just the school district, but the city as well. When the promise was announced, Thompson was an award-winning U.S. history teacher, as well as a social studies department coordinator, the parental involvement coordinator, and the student council sponsor of El Dorado High School. You exhibit skills that most people in promise programs have, which is wearing multiple hats. So I commend you. She is past president of the El Dorado Service League and the Alpha Phi chapter of the Delta Kappa Gamma Professional Teachers Sorority. So that's Sylvia Thompson. And then to Sylvia's left is Dr. Gabby Gonzalez. She is a sociologist at RAND Corporation. We have worked actually together pretty closely over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, the entire time that I've been here. And she has conducted studies in a number of different areas, but she certainly RAND Corporation conducted a study of the Pittsburgh Promise, and she has just completed a study that you heard today of both the New Haven Promise, and we will be releasing results from the second part of that study, which is on school change. So thank you, Gabby. And then Salim Gabriel is the executive director of the Pittsburgh Promise. In 1985, Salim founded the Pittsburgh Project, a community development organization that annually provides free home renovations to hundreds of vulnerable seniors and mentors, and educates and deploys thousands of volunteer youth in meaningful community service initiatives. Salim led the Pittsburgh Project until 2008, when he assumed the leadership of the Pittsburgh Promise. And I must say, when I read some of the background material on you, it was very clear that you were very entrenched, very committed, very well respected in your community. So I know that they're very fortunate to have you there in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Promise is a regional economic and workforce development entity that focuses on transforming the quality of education and life in the city of Pittsburgh. He is currently the volunteer pastor of the Mosaic Community Church in Pittsburgh. He also serves on the boards of the Buell Foundation, Vibrant Pittsburgh, and the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh. And then we get to Dr. Janice Brown, who is, we all know who she is. Her reputation precedes her. She's currently a trustee for the Kalamazoo Promise. Dr. Brown was the executive director of the Kalamazoo Promise, superintendent of Kalamazoo Public Schools from July 2000 to August 2007. She remains involved, obviously, and very committed to the effort. In addition, she has over 40 years of experience working at all levels of public education. She has been a teacher, consultant, visiting professor, state administrator, principal, and central office administrator. One capstone of her tenure as superintendent for Kalamazoo Public Schools was the preparation and announcement. Obviously, how we really know her is the Kalamazoo Promise. She was featured, the Kalamazoo Promise was featured in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today. The list goes on and on, including the Katie Couric Show. So welcome, Dr. Janice Brown. And then our moderator for this evening is someone I know, not really, really well, but our paths have crossed a number of different times, Jack Ford, who is an Emmy award-winning journalist and a Peabody award-winning journalist, prominent trial attorney, author, and teacher. Jack has had a unique and remarkably successful career. He was raised by a single parent. His journey has taken him from a small town in New Jersey to Yale University to Jeopardy, where he did quite well. That helped to finance your legal education at Fordham, I believe. He's currently the co-founder, chief editor, and anchor of the American Education Television Network. So he is very committed to this work, very committed to education, and obviously from his personal story is a product of what we do and wants to make sure that we can increase this access for all of our young people across the United States. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Roz, and we're going to jump right in. I will say that once we get through the panelists, and I'm sure Jack will be a wonderful moderator, he has a gift for that, we are encouraging you to be very active and very vocal. So without further ado, Roz.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to take a minute and say a couple things about Patricia, who couldn't introduce herself. Patricia, as you heard, is a Yale alum, but what you may not know is she was also a fantastic athlete while she was here. And during her career, she reached the height of being an Olympic trials finalist. And in 2013, Yale awarded her the George H.W. Bush Award, which is the highest award that we give out to our scholar athletes. And that sense of competition, that sense of achievement that she has gained from her athletic career, she's also experienced, used in her educational career. And I was really struck when I went to the New Haven Promise Scholar Celebration, how all of the scholars came into the auditorium like they were coming into an Olympic stadium. And they had huge billboards with the schools that they were going to on. So she uses every aspect of her background to really push this amazing program. Since joining New Haven Promise in 2 years, she has seen increases in excess of 40% in applications and awards, and that the rate of Promise-funded minority males especially has soared by 140%. She's implemented new initiatives, which include Passport to Promise, which is a second chance for some students that don't reach the criteria the first time, and importantly, Promise Ambassadors, which supports the students once they get to the schools, because it's not only about getting them into college, it's about persistence and having them graduate. So Patricia, as well as all our other panelists, will bring a lot of wonderful ideas to this discussion. It has been a great thrill and honor for me to work on this project. It's slightly different than the financial work I usually do with Andrew, but it was a really enjoyable thing and a wonderful learning experience. I want to thank everyone, the panelists and other people who I talked to and who provided me invaluable information. What I'm going to do is go through a short deck of slides that kind of hits the highlights of the case. If you haven't read it, I urge you to read it at some point. And please do email me with any thoughts that you have. But I'm hoping that it will spark a really involved and a lively conversation today about PromiseNet. If I can get this to happen. Yes. So we started with what's happening and why we even have this discussion. The problem, as I learned, is that it's about how our educational system relates to our economy. And what is happening is that America's rate of producing college graduates is lagging behind the other major countries. A recent global study, America came out 19th of 28 major countries. 39% of young US people are graduating college compared to rates of 59%, 57% in other countries. We are behind countries like the US and France. What does this cause? It means that our productivity is at risk. If people are not well educated. It's predicted that within 10 years, half of the jobs, I think it's 2/3 of the jobs, will require higher education. And we just don't have the number of graduates. We have a skills gap where, although we have now relatively lower unemployment, October unemployment was 5.8%, I believe, many employers still say they cannot find the people to fill the jobs that they have. We also have an achievement gap where, although we have free public education, many of our students, and particularly certain populations as low-income students and racial minorities, are not achieving as well as they possibly could be. So what we need to do as a country is to increase the rate of college attainment. There's a lot of researchers looking at what that needs to be. One of them is the Lumina Foundation, who has been a big supporter of Promise. They have established a goal 2025. The aim is, by that year, to increase the proportion of Americans with college degrees to 60%, which is a far better match for the 65% of jobs that the industry will be producing that will need that. When they talk about college attainment, they also talk about higher level certificates and other types of post-secondary education. So college is used generically here. In order to do that, the Lumina Foundation and other researchers say, we as a country can't just rely on the traditional populations that have gone to college, rely on parents to get their kids to graduate to go to college and to pay college tuition, which has just been skyrocketing. We need to recapture and re-engage all populations and to create better access. That's one thing that the Promise programs do. It's part of the solution. These are place-based initiatives that create excitement and hope. They motivate students who maybe had never thought about going to college to actually see the light at the end of the tunnel, even sometimes from kindergarten, because they live in El Dorado or Kalamazoo or New Haven, and they begin by thinking they can go to college. They provide the money, which eliminates one, or at least helps to address one of the huge barriers that people have today for going to college. And the truth is that Promise programs do produce college graduates. Some of the programs are new, and some of them have been studied about how well they do that, but people do graduate through the college programs. But most importantly is this excitement and hope. As Patricia said, Promise programs change communities, and we'll talk about how they're wrapped around communities, not just the students, but the school systems, the economics in the town. There is, however, much variation among the Promise programs. I was surprised to find out. If you look at one and another, they don't always look alike. This may not be a problem. Some of the issues are how universal or inclusive they should be. In some Promise towns, as long as you have a residency there and go to high school for 4 years and graduate and get accepted to college, you can get a Promise scholarship. Other programs require a certain GPA, community service. Some are very actively and formally tied to promoting school engagement. And I think they all do impact the school systems in which they are, but some of them do it more formally, and others provide support to their students, either at the high school through providing tutoring and counseling, or also at the college level by providing some of the programs that New Haven does to make sure they stay engaged in college. Some of them are more closely tied to the economic development. We heard at the panel this afternoon, the representative from Murphy Oil talk about how economics was a really strong driver for why they started the El Dorado Promise, and how they've seen that different businesses gravitate to the school to the town because of some of the effects of the Promise. So there's a lot of variation, and we're going to talk about that. What's good about it, what's not so good about it. Right now, this is how I visualize the Promise today. It's a loose affiliation. There's a lot of different organizations. Because there's not one definition of Promise, the programs kind of self-select themselves into saying, I'm a Promise program. You don't have to use the name Promise, but if you want to be affiliated, you come to PromiseNet, you call yourself a Promise, you're in. They, which is not a bad thing. You know, this is the 6th PromiseNet conference, I believe, so there's been a collective mindset. They get together every year, they share ideas, and support each other that way. Many of the different Promise programs also, they talk to each other on an ongoing basis during the year and share ideas. A city that is aspiring to be a Promise, they will pick up the phone and call the executive director at one city and say, how did you do this? They'll call another one. So from the external point of view, not having a little more cohesion might be a little challenging, but this is a model which is organically replicating itself. It's amazing to see that cities are reaching out and trying to get this information. So it's a very powerful, and I find it's a very attractive model. The question is Promise today or tomorrow, can it be better? So the question is, if it's more closely in line tomorrow, what are the benefits and what might that look like? Well, potentially you could have a more easily definable definition of model, of Promise. It could be a place-based program that provides scholarships and whatever we decide that might be. You could have one that has regular communications, either through having a few advisory committees, that executive or regular executive directors council that meets, or an advisory committee where they regularly get together to talk about programming type things. If you had more structure, potentially you could devise a multi-year type of agenda. Right now, the Promise Jet is kind of done on a year-by-year basis. The host city takes it on, and there is a joint committee, but if you have more structure, you have more opportunities for longer-term planning. You could create a website, a better face to the external world for aspiring parties to come to. We already talked about the annual conferences. They could be multiple purposes. You could not only have a conference which talks about best practices, but also tracks a policy agenda and invites different people for that. And as a collective, you would not just be one city's program. You would be a program of 30, 40 programs that reach tens of thousands of students that could operate more as a thought leader, that could be the person that people go to in Washington or researchers when they want to know what's the Promise position and what does Promise think about things. There are opportunities for collective fundraising, and I'll talk about some of that and some of the other models. And there is an opportunity just for visionary learning. When you're all connected, you can perhaps see more closely not what the variations are, but what the similarities are, and how do you get from 2 + 2 to 5 when you're talking more about it. So what we want to talk about is where you are and where you want to go. In order to do that, we've kind of, in a case, given you a few models to look at. 2 of the models are from education, and then just to stretch you, we picked one from the non-educational realm. This particular model, Gateway to College, you might know this. It's a network of college access programs that recapture people who've dropped out of high school and not only get them back to learn their high school degrees, but get them to earn college degrees. The executive director, Nick Mathern, is here, and I hope he'll add to the conversation. Gateway to College in 10 years grew from one program in Oregon to engage to be 43 colleges in 23 states. I call it the strong parent model because it was a funded program that the mission was to go out and replicate these programs. So they all look very much alike, a little different than Promise. But the benefits are, if you're Gateway to College, people know who you are exactly. You'll see in the case study, there's 5 elements that Nick just rattled off. This is what Gateway does, and everyone that they replicated has to do that. And a good thing about that, it's a proven formula. And so it works in Oregon, it works in Indiana, it works in Louisiana. The parent organization does a lot of communicating with the different organizations and seeing what they need and trying to provide the resources that they do, that they need. Nick was very clear on the parent only exists to serve the elements. So this is not something to be scared away from. A lot of organizations that we belong to, whether they're sororities or professional organizations, have this model. And the parent, the trick is to have the parent exist to serve what the members need. The second model comes from Teach for All. And you're all probably familiar with Teach for America. Teach for All is the international organization that grew out of Teach for America. It took a model that worked in America that had been replicated in the UK, and many people around the world liked this model and came and said, we want to try and recreate it. I call it a steady center because one of the similarities with Promise is they don't go out and seed organizations. The organizations come to them and say, how do we do this? But they have a really strong central organization that has a model and has a tool to help people replicate it. For example, they will tell you if you want to start a Teach for All in your country that you need to look at a 2-year lead time to do that before you can seed your first cohort. They will tell you that you have to have certain relationship with the schools, you need to be able to raise this funding, you need to have an advisory board, and they will send to you an advisor on the ground for 2 years to help you get up and running. And only when you've passed certain criteria and met certain first stage criteria can you be admitted as a full member of Teach for All. But the organization exists to support these different country organizations, make sure they're strong, make sure that they are making connections, like there's a group, a consortium in South America, because it makes sense that they relate to each other. And they also are able to do some collective funding, so that then they're developing IT programs and some standards that they can share with all of their different models. So Promise, for example, if Promise were to follow this, there could be some collective funding that maybe developed one application for all the Promise programs. You could work with the researchers collectively to say, these are some of the data that we're going to collect from the Promise students so that certain studies can be done. The G20 is a grouping of some of the largest economies and some of the smallest economies in the world. It's been around for over 10 years. It migrated from being the G7. And what they do is worry about the world's economies and try and keep countries stable and grow so we avoid some of the financial crises and problems we've had. But what struck me about them is that when you have a grouping of the United States, the UK, Brazil, India, you have large economies, you have small economies, you have democratic economies, you have communist economies like China, all very different. And yet, they have this structure that kind of pulls them together loosely. And how it works is they group the countries into 4 groups, and each year, a new country from Group A, Group B, Group C, takes on the presidency. And the real goal is they create the G20 summit. But aside from just creating the summit, they also shepherd through different advisory committees that happen. There's ongoing collective advisory committees where they're dealing with a lot of different issues on an ongoing basis. Now, if you are India or any of these countries, you have not so many budget constraints, and you can fund yourself. But again, this kind of structure is one that is not unlike what PromiseNet is doing now, because the city that hosts PromiseNet has to fund it. Here, you could move to something slightly different and perhaps create the troika that you see there, which is just a standardized form of a lot of what your administrative committee is now. So you would have, for example, New Haven, Kalamazoo, which is the 2015 host, and then the next year's host, all being like on an oversight committee so that there are different voices heard as you go through the process. So here we are, and the question is, where do we go from here? But you all are promised, and you all get to decide. And I just hope that some of what you're seeing gets your juices going and flowing. We would like to have a dialogue, and Jack is going to lead you in that. And I hope it'll be instructive, and I hope that you all will find it something that is very useful. Thank you.
So I also want to welcome you here this evening. We're doing something a little bit different. We are essentially marrying a couple of formats here tonight. We're going to use Roz's presentation, and she did such a wonderful job putting that all together to help us all understand this. Going to use that as a springboard. And it's going to be a springboard into truly a conversation. This is not a panel of talking heads. This is designed to be a town hall type of session. It only works if indeed some of you are willing to participate. All right, so what we're going to do is this. We're going to start with some bigger issues, some bigger picture questions. And then ultimately we're going to work our way down to this. If you look at the title of this event, it talks about towards a more unified or closer network, but there's a question mark at the end of that title. And that's because we're going to talk about whether or not indeed there should be a more unified, closer network. If there is, what it should look like, what limitations it should have, what about the breadth of its approach. And we'll get opinions from our panelists here, and we're looking for both questions from you out here and thoughts and observations from you out here. So we're going to drive it a little bit with a hypothetical to get us started, to get us into the conversation. And the important thing to keep in mind is this, and I say this often in these types of sessions. We're here to make this indeed a dialogue, a conversation. And the way I describe it is, we're not here to make up anybody's mind or tell them what they should conclude here. Our purpose is to make the agony of decision-making so intense that you can escape it only by thinking. And that's what we're hoping we'll all do collectively and out loud here. So I'm going to start off with some questions, but I'm going to periodically be looking out there for some of you to jump in to our conversation, as I said, with either a question or some thought or some observation, something that can help to drive our conversation. All right? Good. So let's start off with a big picture question, because I know there are some of you here who are involved in Promise programs. Some of you are here because you want to be involved in Promise programs. Some of you might be researchers. Some might be funders. So to get a better understanding of what we're talking about, let's start with the first big question. Let's assume for the moment that I am somebody who just sold my business and I made a lot of money. And I'm at this point in my life where I want to do something good. And I want to give back to people. And through my own experience, and this is not hypothetical, having been raised by a single mother, and for me to go to college, somebody else was going to have to help me with that. And fortunately they did, got me here. But let's assume that I've got all this money. I want to do something good, something productive, and I've heard about this promise thing. And so I come to you, and Patricia, I'm going to ask you first. I come to you, and I say, Patricia, I understand you're involved in this promise thing, and I'm thinking of doing something, but I don't know what it is, because I sort of see and hear different types of things. So what would you say to me if I asked you to define it for me? How would you define it?
Well, I think I would define it as, really a place-based intervention that is systemic. And so if you care about, let's take Yale's involvement, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. These are all individuals and organizations who are very concerned about a specific place. And so it's very place-based, and it's focused on not just the people in that locale, but it's also focused on the health of that locale, in this case, economic development.
What else should I know about this? Janice, let me ask you. You were involved early on. All right, so I'm sure people say to you, what's this promise thing that you're doing? What else should I know about it?
Wouldn't you absolutely love to invest in youth, to make that difference you want to make in your life for their post-secondary education, and know that it's going to transform the community in which you live and the many lives of the youth that you invest in? And we can keep track of every single one of those youth and tell you exactly what your return on investment will be.
So let's assume that my company that I built was a sort of traditional company. Right? We had, I fell under an umbrella that was recognizable, a business that had been around for a long time. And so in this conversation we're having now, and Salim, I'm going to come to you about all this because I'm learning from Patricia and Janice about this. And I say to you, well, this sounds really interesting. So I assume all these promise programs, they're all the same, right?
They're not all the same, no. In fact, if they are truly serving their mission, they shouldn't be all the same because
why not?
Because neighborhoods are different, schools are different, families are different, kids are different. Each one has to kind of fit the personality, the character, the priorities, the ambitions, the culture of its own context. And the freedom to do that is absolutely essential to being able to be relevant and impactful in our various communities.
But to me, and Sylvia, I'll ask you this question. To me, if I'm trying to get a handle on this, I'm a business person. I like sort of straight up and down concepts. So I'm hearing good things about promise, but then I'm hearing it's a wonderful concept, but it's all different. And I say to myself, what does that mean? And is that a good thing?
Oh, I definitely think it's a good thing. I think the universal thing about our promise programs are that they are place-based, and I think Patricia hit on that. That's the first part of the definition of a program. It is place-based. So your program has to fit your place, just like Salim said. And so it makes you first look at your community, see what their needs are, see what needs to happen, what do you want to improve, what do you want to affect, what changes do you want to bring about, and then you design your program to make those things happen.
Gabby, as a researcher, let's say I come to you and I say, I'm hearing all these different things, very interesting, but they are very different here. And you sort of look at bigger pictures. How would you describe for me the idea of these promise programs?
So for me, it's, and I feel like I'm echoing everybody on the panel because I think we actually are on the same page, even though the structure of all these promise programs varies. The idea is that there is a goal, and so as a potential funder, let's say, you need to make sure that your own personal priorities are in line with the goal. And typically, across all these programs, the bigger goal really is community engagement, community development. And the mechanism to meet that goal is essentially providing more opportunity, greater access for youth in that community. And there are a variety of ways, essentially what Salim just mentioned, about how, given the needs of that specific community, how to improve access and opportunity, how to communicate clearly to the youth about these opportunities. But really the goal is certainly, it's a bigger social impact about economic development and the different facets of what that means. And really about, again, developing a community spirit, that this is a region, a city, a community, a school district to invest in personally with our blood, sweat, and tears and money, and research. And it really is a way of galvanizing support in communities. It's bigger than just the funding.
So if my character now is intrigued by this, all right, I listen to this.
I hope it is.
And don't forget to sideline some money for evaluation.
So my character now is intrigued by this. I've had these conversations with you. So, I'm a traditional business person, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into all of this. So I'm assuming there's one location I can go to, and I can find out everything I need to know about Promise Program.
There is.
Where?
The internet, Google.
But here's the question. Would you be concerned then that I, as a potential funder, say to myself, okay, this sounds like a really good idea, has great potential, so I'm going to find out where I can go. Where's this one clearinghouse? Everybody has a clearinghouse, right? Everybody has a place you can go to, and you can answer all your questions. So I go on the internet, and I'm not finding anything. I'm finding Kalamazoo, I'm finding El Dorado, I'm finding New Haven, I'm finding Pittsburgh, and they all look a little bit different. Why isn't there one place for me to go to where I can have all my questions answered? Who wants to jump in with this one for me? Do we have does somebody want to jump?
Anyone in the audience care to answer that?
Somebody?
Actually, as of today, there is one place.
Grab the mic for me.
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Today, there is one place you can go.
Just tell me who you are and where you're from, if you would, to help.
My name is Morley Winograd. I'm the head of a nonprofit called the Campaign for Free College Tuition. And as of today, you can go to www.freecollegenow.org, and you'll see a map of the United States with a description of every Promise program and lots of information on policy and funding and the history of the movement towards free college.
All right. So that sounds helpful to me.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I'm more enthused and encouraged now than I was a minute ago.
So how
But
can you
it's funny, everybody seems to be asking me the same question here now that I have this mic. But I'm still looking at this saying, there's an awful lot here for me to figure out. So where do I go? Hold one second, I'm coming right to you. Gabby, you were going to say something.
I just want to mention that I just want to touch on what Roz noted, that this was really a grassroots effort. And in such a way that it grew from really a loose coupling of almost like a confederation of these different programs. There was certainly a communication network relying on, speaking to different executive directors. So I think your points are well taken, that here we are 9 years later since the implementation of the Kalamazoo Promise. And so the broader question is, are we at a place where some type of more centralized, not centralized, network is necessary? So that for one example is that so people know about new websites that are popping up, so that people know about cutting edge research that's going on. I mean, it's a good question.
Yes.
Oh,
right here.
There is a resource that's been around for some time. The Upjohn Institute has been collecting all the different sources of information, especially research and evaluation, and collecting them on their website for a number of years. And the Lumina Foundation has more recently funded a collaborative of researchers and evaluators who are doing work on the various Promise programs. And so there's been quite a bit of collaboration across researchers, and I encourage everybody could go to the Upjohn Institute. There's a ton of stuff there that's been collected.
All right, great. And you?
I'm Michael Watson. I work in human resources, and I'm concerned about the output of this process. So my question to any of you is, how do we scale this or convince other people in multiple communities across the country to do some type of process like this sooner? Because it appears that it's dependent upon, in a particular community, some people getting around to looking on the internet, calling some people, starting things up. That appears to be a very slow process to getting to 2025 with all these extra college graduates.
So it's that question sort of is the umbrella question that we're talking about here. Let's look at it a couple different ways. Right? We talked about researchers and having access to something, and we're going to come back to this question in 1 second. We talked about researchers. We talked about where would I go if I've got money, if I'm a funder. How about where would I go if I was somebody who didn't have the money but had the idea and the genuine passion for making something happen? And again, I've heard about Promise, and I'm saying to myself, that sounds great. How do I do that? Where do I go now if that's what I'm trying to figure out? Is there someplace for me to go?
Well, the original Promise Net started in Kalamazoo and with the Upjohn Institute because there were a number of programs that were in the thinking stage across the United States. And when we were implementing, we were getting calls every day. So we decided that we should just get together and start to discuss what the promise concept was all about so that we could learn from each other. And that's really how PromiseNet started. And it doesn't seem like a slow process to me. It seems like there have been a large number of communities that have jumped on board and really promoted Promise to thousands and thousands of students to make their life better. Perhaps if we were more formal, we could escalate that process. But since it's a grassroots effort, I don't know where the additional funding would come, because I don't see the federal government anteing up at this moment in their history.
Absolutely.
May I have a second to share an anecdote?
Please,
All right.
absolutely.
So in Roz's presentation at the beginning, she kind of cited 3 different models and suggested G20 as one of them. Since Pittsburgh hosted the G20 summit, I'm going to just use that for a moment as an analogy. President Obama picked Pittsburgh when it was his turn to host the summit, and the leaders of the world's largest economies were there, 20 of them, along with their spouses. We can't call them first ladies anymore because some of them are first dudes. And so our first lady, Mrs. Obama, hosted the rest of the first spouses for the 3 days that the leaders were meeting. And Mrs. Obama wanted to show the first spouses some of the things happening in public education in the city, and she asked if we would host her and them in one of our schools, which of course we were delighted to do. And I happened to be in that building at that time. They tried to give me, when your name is Salim, Henry Salim, Asad Khalil, Marcus Gabriel, you have to kind of pass certain clearances before they allow you near the first spouses. So I passed through the clearances, and I was given a job. My job on that day was to literally hold and open and close the doors for the first spouses as they were coming and going. And then we invited 250 of our kids, our high school kids, so the 250 kids were there. The first spouses were there. And then Mrs. Obama invited 3 of her favorite artists to perform, Yo-Yo Ma, Trisha Yearwood, Sarah Bareilles. She gave a brilliant speech. Our kids performed. The 3 professional artists performed. Now, in order to allow the first spouses to leave without mayhem, we kept the kids in the auditorium and asked the 3 professional artists to take questions. And the kids asked a bunch of questions, and then the last one was, tell me please about a time when you had an embarrassing moment on stage. Sarah Bareilles told hers, and to save time I won't go into it. Trisha Yearwood told hers, and then Yo-Yo Ma told his, and he made a very poignant statement. He said, I have stories like Trisha's and like Sarah's were just kind of like, funky and funny and embarrassing and so on. But he said, however, my most embarrassing moments, and he said they're plural, on stage, were the times when I went up on stage and this is the poignant part, lest you miss it. He said, and I get on stage and I forget why I'm on stage. He didn't say I forget how to play. He didn't say I forget my music. I forget how to, I just forget why, the purpose. I forget my purpose for being on stage. And that to me has been a haunting question, forgetting our purpose. And frankly, with all due respect, my purpose is not to make it easier for you. My purpose is about a few thousand kids in a particular city, in a particular neighborhood, who are not getting access to the resources that they deserve, who are not getting the education that they need, who are not getting the support services in the pre-K-12 that every kid has to have. Some kids have them because their parents provide them, and other kids have them because somebody else has to provide them. And I can't for a moment, this movement, as it has moved from Kalamazoo to other cities very rapidly, you're right, did not happen because somebody said, we need to spread this out. It happened because folks in their local communities said, these kids are our kids, and we must take ownership and responsibility for them and pull all the stops, remove all the barriers, do everything that has to happen in order for that to occur.
And clearly that's essential. But I guess the question is, it comes back to here, is that if we recognize the value, that intrinsic value, that enormous value, all right? I'm a product of that. I wasn't going to college unless somebody helped me out. And, and I've been able to point to everything I've ever done since because I had some people who helped me out. But I would like other people to hear your story. So how do we do that? I mean, does that mean that you have to essentially say, all right, we have to buy into a big umbrella organization that's going to be our mouthpiece and it's going to get our message out there, and we have to be a part of that in order for Promise to be successful? Or do we say, we're okay with having Kalamazoo handle its business, and Pittsburgh handle its business, and New Haven, and Arkansas, and El Dorado? What's the answer to that? And Salim, I'll ask you.
The organization of a network is, I'm neutral about it. So this is not neither pro nor con. It's really about to what end. As long as the end is absolutely crystal clear, and the end doesn't end up taking away in any way from the importance of each of us taking full responsibility for the kids who are ours. And I get that at the end of the day, all kids are our kids, and then my job is to shepherd and nurture these 25,000 who are in my schools right now, and the 25,000 who are going to come after them, and so on. As long as whatever we do doesn't take resources away, doesn't take attention away, doesn't in any way divert what is critically needed in our most vulnerable communities.
How about that? What should an end be? Somebody who, take a position here, or somebody out here, somebody take a position as to what should an end be for a network such as this. Yes?
I'm Bob Jorth with the Kalamazoo Promise. And to echo a bit of what Janice and Salim said, I think the end is to make every one of our programs the best possible program they can be for our community. And I think that's when we decided to do the PromiseNet the first time in Kalamazoo. Part of it was to share our story, but it was also to bring other people in with different ideas and similar issues that they address differently in their communities. We had the funding taken care of in our community, but we certainly didn't have the support piece done. There were a lot of pieces that we had to work on that all communities have to work on. And so we were selfish by starting PromiseNet because it was a way for us to get help in our community and at the same time share our story.
Do you almost have to be, and let me ask you, jump in on that. Sylvia, I ask you this. Do you almost have to be selfish when you're saying, I mean, you like to think that everybody's being altruistic here, and this is a wonderful idea, so let's take this idea and let's spread it as fast and as far as we possibly can. Here, let's get more people involved than we possibly can. But do you almost have to be, at least in the early stages, selfish about this?
Well, I think it takes so much energy that you do have to be selfish. Yeah. It is a tremendous amount of work, energy, and effort to create a Promise-like program. And in order to make it work, as Salim has indicated and others have indicated, your concentration and your efforts have to be almost entirely on your community. And that takes just about all the juice you have. And believe me, I have a lot of juice. So, and having been through this, and I know Salim, most of the people here have a lot of energy to do this work, but we really have to focus on our community at the onset.
But does this come back to, Sylvia, let me ask you this. Does this come back to what our sort of premise is here, which is me looking to do something, understanding how extraordinarily intensive this work is going to be to start it, but does this come back to my original premises, which is, well, then why isn't there a central place? Why isn't there a network for me to go to get guidance, to get help, to help me set up my promise wherever I want to be? Isn't there a value then?
Well, I think from the audience, several different things have said that there is. Of course, Google is the best one. Because from Google, you're going to find all those other parts. But I think in southern Arkansas, Texas speak, our business is our place, and that takes our energy. We've got to take care of our place.
Let's get some of the other folks involved up here. We have a few. We're going to work our way around the room.
Hi. So, yeah, I don't think that, I think it's important to keep in mind that place-based scholarships are one strategy toward community transformation and college access. They are not the only one. And there are a plethora of strategies out there that help kids go on to college. I also don't feel like promise programs have been in any way sort of under-publicized. Like, you know, Janice was on Good Morning America, and Eldorado Promise was in American Way magazine and People magazine and, you know, USA Today. So what has happened and what's been really fascinating to watch is as people read about this, they say, wow, this could be a really awesome thing for my community. And we've seen communities where it's just one really excited person who says, I'm going to make this happen in my community, and turns to their local community and says, where are my assets? What is my community's critical need? How can we address it? Who do we need to convene? And, you know, as researchers, it's really hard to grapple with the fact that these programs are all different, but it's really the beauty of them. They've all been created to serve the needs of their own community by people who are passionate about their own community. And some communities have different sets of assets than others, but we've seen incredible array of diverse models and diverse funding sources and different structures emerge. And, you know, as long as we can kind of stay in touch with each other and develop, you know, with my colleagues here, some sort of common resources, best practices, make the information that we're finding a little bit easier to get to, develop more of an empirical basis for saying, what do these programs do? You know, I think it's pretty rich movement.
Me up back in the corner there. Yes.
Yeah, Anthony Bridgman, Indianapolis. I don't really see that there's a need to centralize. I think that's kind of where you're going. I think having this not a top down, but it's flat. It's a decentralized process. I mean, it's got all of these people here, and it's spawned 34, 35 different programs. So, and I think with Janice's point, where are you going to find the funding to have a central office? If there's some promise organization that's maybe talking with others, and if there are new people that are getting on board, I think there's a beauty in there. All of these other folks and in their different communities are so passionate about this. You get on the internet, you find somebody, you see a paper that Michelle's written, and then you say, oh wow, there's other people talking about this. There's some analysis, there's some data. I think there's there's beauty in just that decentralization, and there seems to be what I've experienced is just with that passion. People want to talk to others, and they want to get the word out, and they want to continue to share and to see other organizations and initiatives multiply. So it seems like there's just a beauty in that than a top-down or some kind of centralized process.
We have a couple of other. Let's jump in. Would you come on down here, and we'll do these right there, gentlemen, and then the young lady behind him also, and then we'll come back right over.
So
we'll come over to you in a second.
I totally agree with everybody who said the place-based folks need to focus on their place, and they need to make it an exceptional place, because that's what will attract others to trying to do the same thing. And I completely agree with Michelle and the others who've suggested that there is no need for top-down direction for that to happen. Having said that, in order to accelerate the movement without draining resources from anybody else, there is an opportunity using today's technology, social media, websites, all the other things we've talked about, that will enable people to find out more quickly what is out there, to be able to find assistance more rapidly, and to create a change in the public's mood about why this idea of free college tuition and place-based scholarships is so important. That's the only reason we started our nonprofit. We wanted to make Kalamazoo's promise America's promise. And we intend to accomplish that without getting in anybody's way here, and in fact, simply being a champion.
Right behind him, if we could.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Megan Eiffel. I'm here in New Haven. I am a parent, a community member, not an educator. I met other parents here who are not in education but want to bring promise to their town. So I think having it just centralized may exclude community members. I'm retired, so I actually have the time to be here to be in Hartford, work with many different organizations. So I think having the resources available, using your community members to be your foot soldiers, to be at the table to see what's best for their children is incredibly helpful. My son's a high school student. He's a senior. He's going to be one of the panelists tomorrow. So here in New Haven, we really do welcome parent, community, and youth voices.
Will is next, and can we get that mic over to this gentleman on the aisle there? Will, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Will Ginsberg from New Haven, the Community Foundation. I was going to say that the field I'm in, which community philanthropy, actually presents both models. So community foundations don't have a national network. We don't have a national organization. We get together, we talk. When we started, we're instrumental in helping to start New Haven Promise. You know, one of the people I talked to was Salim. And how did I get to Salim? Through the Pittsburgh Foundation, because I know the Pittsburgh Foundation. So it's a network, but it's not formalized. But at the, community philanthropy, the other big community philanthropic intermediary in communities across this country is United Way. United Way does have a centralized network. It's called United Way of America. If you turn on a football game on Sunday, you're going to see public service ads for United Way because United Way of America puts this. So to answer your question, Jack, what would come out of a network? Well, maybe a public service ad. You're not going to see a public service ad for Community Foundation on a football game on Sunday. You are going to see an ad for United Way. So I think there's something to be said on both sides. But I think the essential truth around not having a network is what's been said by a number of people, what was said so well by Salim, which is that this is about looking in, not necessarily looking out. And what I would say to your hypothetical individual who wants to start a Promise program in your community in New Jersey or wherever it might be is, who should you be talking to? You should be talking to your school superintendent, you should be talking to teachers that you know, you should be talking to fellow philanthropists in your community, you should be talking to institutions of higher education that might be interested in funding, as we were fortunate enough to have here in this community with Yale. So those are the places you go, and the people who are going to find out about this by seeing a public service ad on TV may not find out about Promise, but there are lots of other ways to connect with the people who want to do this in their local communities.
Hear from this gentleman, and then somebody give me, after this gentleman said, somebody give me an argument that says why we should have a strong, centralized network. Think about it for a second. Let's come to this gentleman first.
Hi, Marvin Taller. I'm with Pathways to College. Here in, I live in New Haven. But I was going to give you an argument for why there should be a central, because my background, I've done a lot of marketing and development, and from a standpoint, when someone says they want to give you money and they can't find how to give you money, you have a problem. So, I think that I agree with the panel on that. In my program, I'm responsible for all the students in my program. Those are my kids. And we can only service maybe 100 kids in a school, and we want to effectuate school change, but I'm really concerned about my 100 kids, so I understand that. But inside of what it would take to centralize this, I think anyone on that panel could stand up as a leader of this tribe. This is a tribe of education and a tribe of this problem. Any one of you has the pull and the clout to stand up and say, I want to take this to the next level. And I'm not pointing fingers. I know I'm not the guy, but that's what it takes. It takes someone to stand up and say, I'm going to take this to the next level and lead this movement outward. The nice thing, I also Googled, we were sitting here, so I Googled, how can I pay for college? And what comes up are ads for loans and things like that. So then I Googled, how do I pay for college in Kalamazoo? And then the Promise comes up. So there is a little bit of a marketing and finding these programs problem that we need to address.
Can you, I guess one of the questions is, can you be successful today, especially when there is such competition for the dollars out there that would help to fund programs like this? Can you be successful without marketing, without getting out there? In my business, if a story comes across and it has something to do about a Promise program, you're going to get somebody to jump on the story, and the first thing they're going to say is, find the umbrella organization for Promise. Somebody find that so we can find what it's all about, and they can refer us to people and give us an essence of what's out there. So I guess my question is that enough to say there should be indeed some centralized organization, some network out there? Somebody, let's jump. You jump in first, and then somebody answer my question for me.
Hi, my name is Mark Eifelhaney. I'm a high school senior, and I will be a panelist for the youth panel tomorrow. Back to your original question, which was what would be an argument for a central network. That would be a good way to get a lot of funders. If they see that there's a big place that they could go, they want it as easy as possible, so they could potentially go there. I think it's good, like this gentleman said over here with an awesome mustache, by the way. It would be it's good to see both sides. It's supposed to see both sides of the argument. Like one could argue for days or forever about why there shouldn't be and why they should be self-managing, and that would be because like we need to focus on our own communities. But one could also argue for the centralized because it'd be easier for funders to get more money, and actually we could distribute it better throughout each promise. So something could be said on both sides.
So you asked earlier about someone who's passionate about education doesn't know where to go. That's me. I had no idea where to go.
I think you're in the right place right now.
So I think I am too. We're learning a tremendous amount. So back, 2008, 2009, I ran across Kalamazoo Promise. I ran across El Dorado, ran across Upjohn, put some links in my browser. I'm busy working, making my money, trying to keep my family going. And eventually Facebook comes along. And I'm able to connect on Facebook with New Haven Promise and with El Dorado and with others. And I just got lucky that I happened to be available to spend a couple of days off work to come here and learn more. And I have no place to go right now to really find out what I need to do, what case study I need to follow in my town to get all the stakeholders. So the first thing I found out when I got here was I missed the superintendent of my local high school in who I've contacted as stakeholders. I contacted people that work for it, but I didn't contact the superintendent. So having a model, having a place to go to find out what we need to do and what the possibilities are. Someone will Google and they'll find Kalamazoo Promise, but there's no indication that I could have gone to Janice back in 2009 as I was driving from Cleveland to Chicago, going, Kalamazoo's right up there. Or driving from Cleveland to Saginaw, going, Kalamazoo's just off the way, and where I can learn. And so that's a really key thing that I think that we can contribute in some way, is help provide people the contact that say, if you want to do this, this is the place to be, and how to do that and how to get that network going. So not a central organization of control, but a central place for information, which I think that this gentleman is talking about here. But that's what we need in my town, Akron, Ohio, is a central place where I can help get all the stakeholders involved and get them all knowing the best practice, and not just get my vision, but get a best practice vision that we have coming out of this community.
Here's a thought. Call LeBron.
So, interestingly enough, one of the stakeholders that I did contact was the LeBron James Family Foundation. They do something very similar to the Montgomery County does here, and he identifies 30 third graders, and he's paying for college for them and coaching them and mentoring them. And so he's got the start of it, but it's called I Promise. It's called I Promise. Not associated with this at all, didn't come from this at all. It's called I Promise, and LeBron James said, I promise to you. And the kids say, I promise to you. And so anyway, that's a program that he started in Akron, but I want it for 800 third graders, not 30. And LeBron doesn't have quite enough yet for 800 third graders.
Yes. We get a mic up top here? Or just stand up and, oh, I'm sorry, right there, and then you're next. I apologize.
LeBron probably has enough. So I was just going to say that I think your question sort of has been answered. I mean, I do think it's what Morley, right? What Morley's doing, I think he's creating the national sort of some sort of national resource for folks to use. But I do want to reiterate what I think some others have said, is that for all of our individual organizations, we've got to stay focused on our community. And if I'm talking to you and you're a funder interested in funding a Promise program, to be honest with you, I'm not going to tell you to fund a national Promise program. I'm going to tell you to fund the Richmond Promise, because that's what my job is, right? That's who I'm focused on. But I do agree that having this broader resource could be helpful. And the other thing I would tell you, if you were a funder, specifically the way that you discussed earlier, where you're interested in it from a national standpoint, I probably would direct you to Morley's organization. And I would say that maybe that's the niche that you should find, is creating this as a national thing, because again, in our local communities, we're going to be focused on raising money for our own local programs. But if you want to start something nationally, I think that's great, and I think you should do it, and you should exactly, and Morley will take your money. The other thing I'll say is I do agree with the person from Akron that when you are starting this up, it is actually hard to find out. I don't think it was, it's publicized, but it's not something everybody knows about. And, in my community, I was the person that sort of pushed this the hardest and got us going. And 2 years ago, when I was first talking about the idea, I didn't know about the Kalamazoo Promise. I didn't know about the El Dorado Promise. I didn't know about any of these. I figured it out after, doing a certain amount of research and moving forward a certain level that was going on. But so I do agree that, if there is a way to make the information more well-known, then we should be doing that. But at the end of the day, each of us individually have to focus on our individual communities.
Here's what we're going to do. We're up against the clock here. Let me get a last question from up here, and then I'm going to ask each of our panelists just for a final thought, just to sort of wrap up what we're doing here. So let me go to you first, if I could.
Thanks. Hi, Nick Mathern, Gateway to College National Network. And I will say that as a convener of a national network, I don't represent a Promise program, but talk to Raz about this case study. We have to deal with this question all the time. And frankly, for us, what's important is that we have to recognize that we only exist as a network to do the things that our individual programs can't do for themselves. And they will only affiliate and support us insofar as we're not competing with them, but we're amplifying their work. And so to the degree to which the work of Promise programs is to work locally in a specific community, I think that the level of affiliation you currently have, which is loose but a good opportunity to exchange technical assistance, is probably a good fit. And I think that the only way that you adopt a deeper level of networking is if you collectively adopt a bigger goal. So, for example, if you liked Morley's goal to say we want free college tuition for all, then you may say we need a bigger organization because we're not going to do that across 30 cities. We need to have a collective message for that. But if instead your focus is to say that we are in fact working on our individual communities, then you probably do remain fairly loosely affiliated. And I did hear one gentleman earlier today, I won't out the person, but it was someone, I think, from Richmond, Virginia, saying, college or Promise programs are a great plan B in the absence of free college for all. And so to the degree to which that's where you're at, then perhaps you want to work on plan B until you feel like, hey, we've got enough people here. We could make a run for the gates and go for plan A. But you need to build a collective movement.
All right, let me get a last thought then from each of our panelists based upon what we've discussed here and this notion of where Promise should be going, I guess is probably the best way to do it. Let's work our way across. Jancy first.
My vision would be to keep the local autonomy of each and every Promise initiative, and at no cost, create an information source so that people can easily access the information for their own community.
Salim?
Just give me a compelling vision and give me show me how, for the kids who are most vulnerable and who are lacking the voice and lacking the opportunities, how, if you can show me how this is going to affect that kid in that neighborhood on that day, I'm all for it. It's all about like never taking our eyes off of the ball, and that's the ball.
Gabby, how about you? You different perspective as a researcher, somebody who looks at all this from above.
Right.
Last thought, where should it be going?
So as a researcher, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I love consolidated data and information. But, and this has been mentioned a few times over the last few days, using that data, research, analysis, information for decision making, for policy making, for actionable efforts to improve programming, to make course corrections, to understand where students are, how can we improve the promise programming to get them where we all want them to go. So I think from a research perspective, in fact, having one place, sort of like a warehouse or clearinghouse in which there is information, there are lessons learned, there's action items, there's, an understanding that this is working in some areas, in some places, this is not working, that same tactic's not working over here because of these reasons. It doesn't mean it's a bad tactic, it's just not working in certain contexts. That is very informative for people to understand how they could produce a promise program that works for their community, works for their students, and meets their needs. And so that we can all sort of learn lessons. So that would be, again, from researchers' perspective, really making research analysis actionable, and that would be certainly a benefit. But I do want to echo, it really would have to be, we don't want to take resources away from the actual programming, from the actual scholarships. So if there is a way that there is a federal resource, some type of grant that could be conjured up for that type of clearinghouse, that would be ideal.
Sylvia, you next, then I'm going to come to Patricia.
When I come to a PromiseNet conference, I go away so blown away by the passion of these people for their communities, for the children of their communities. I wouldn't want to do anything to dilute that passion for their place. So I think the resources, we're all operating with limited resources. So unless you can come up with maybe a wonderful grant of some kind to cover us all. Yes, I do think in this day and age, surely there's a way somebody out there can come up with an overall umbrella to let us have a source, share best practices, pick up the phone, call someone. But to take away resources from our places is probably not in our best interest, and I think it dilutes the passion that are involved in promise programs.
So Patricia, I'm going to take you back to your running days, and I'm going to hand the baton to you and let you kick this in on the last leg here. Last thought for it.
Well, I would say that, it's not sort of an either or, it's a both and. And having been an athlete in very competitive situations, part of me obviously wanted my competition to go away. However, what I really learned is that, you can run a race, but if you're running it by yourself, that's not going to be quite as gratifying, and you're not going to be quite as good in that race all by yourself. And so in our world that's very connected, where we really have to solve big problems, much bigger than our communities. And the way I think we can do that is by coming together collectively, and we need a platform for that. I mean, we don't know what that vision can be, but I think it's certainly worth exploring because we do need to educate all of our kids, and I don't think just staying in our silos is going to get that job done.
So we kicked this off by saying that the idea here was to make you all think And I think we've been successful in doing that. Obviously, we could have taken a lot more time here and had you think out loud a lot more. But given our time constraints, this seemed to be the best we could do here. I think what we should do, in order to thank those who made us think, is to thank our panelists, thank Ravs, Andrew, and School of Management, New Haven Promise. And thank all of you for participating. Thank you very much, all of you.